It's my privilege to introduce our speaker for today. She graduated with a degree in Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Accountancy from University of the Philippines. Currently, she is a member of Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, a member of Sycip Gorres Velayo Co or SGV's Accounting Standards Group, and a member of the Ernst & Young Asia Pacific and SGV subject matter groups on presentation and disclosure and group accounts. Formerly, she joined SGV's Assurance Division, handled audit engagements of multinational groups and locally listed groups of companies in the manufacturing, shipping, logistics, consumer and industrial products, retail, and financial industries. She also assisted in several reviews of IFRS FS several Ernst & Young or EY offices listed clients, developed and participated as a facilitator or instructor in the trainings of various clients on accounting standards, organized the 2014 Asia Pacific IFRS Desk event in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and organized as well several thought leadership or executive briefings for clients. Furthermore, she became a manager of the EY Asia Pacific IFRS Desk core team from 2014 to 2016 and seconded in 2004 to EY San Jose, California as part of the resource sharing program of EY. She is a CPA with more than 14 years of experience in providing audit to local and multinational companies. JPIAns, let's have a warm welcome to Ms. Maria Emilita Villanueva.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for that introduction. How do I call you? Dayan? Shania. Sorry.
Yes, pa, Shania.
Shania, beautiful name. Thank you for the introduction. So, this is my, I think, second time in doing a presentation of a similar topic virtually. So, thank you very much for those who are showing their faces. It's quite different when I'm doing a virtual presentation because I'm not seeing the faces of my audience. So it's very difficult to see or check your reactions to the topic at hand. Okay, so I was given the task to discuss the new definition of business for the amendments to PFRS 3 or the standard on business combinations. Okay. By the way, I'm Emmy. You can call me Miss Emmy Villanueva. I'm a partner in SGV and has been one since 2018. Okay. Let's start. I think I only have, how many hours do I have? 1 hour? Am I right? Mikos? Si Mikos lang kilala ko dito. Okay. So let's start. Can I ask for the slide to be moved to the next? Hi, Mikos.
Hi po, ma'am.
Okay, so this is for today's agenda or this morning's agenda. I will discuss the importance of definition of a business, and then some background on the amendments, and then overview of the main amendments, and then the application of amended requirements. Let me just ask my audience. I have, I think, am I correct, 170 plus? 170 plus participants right now. And let me just ask everybody, what year are you in college right now?
First year po. First year po.
First year college?
Yes.
Yes po.
Second year po, second year.
Second year po.
Second year.
First year
Third
po.
year po.
Second
Okay.
year po.
Sorted. So first year, wala pa kayong major? You haven't yet touched accounting subjects or nag-accounting subjects na kayo?
Meron po.
Meron na po.
But I would guess business combination is advanced. More on advanced accounting. So second year or third year? Tama ba? Back in college, I think I took business combination fourth year. Fourth year college na ako. Okay. Third year, very young. Pwede ko na kayong maging anak. Sige, next slide. Okay. Let me just go through the first one. Okay, by the way, before I start, I have a couple of polling questions on my slides. I think I have 5 or 6. And then at the end of my presentation, I have a short quiz. It's a 5-item quiz. I hope the organizers have set it up in Menti or my Sipaw, the Menti.
Yes,
That
boss.
5-question quiz has a prize at the end. Okay, the top three who will get the correct answers, or the first top 3 will get the correct answers, will get a prize from us. Okay, so we'll just announce the mechanics later on. But for the polling question, Pao, naka-comment ito, or do we just ask them to show hands or answer in the chat box?
Nag-poll po, boss, through Zoom.
Okay,
So
sige.
it will be shown sa screens po nila. Thank you.
Okay, so for the first polling question, just 10 seconds, I think. I just want to know the pulse of the audience. Which among the following is not within the scope of PFRS 3? 1, the accounting for the formation of a joint arrangement. B, the acquisition of an asset or a group of assets that do not constitute a business. C, the combination of entities or businesses under common control. D, all of the above. Just 10 seconds. Saan naka-post? I don't see. Sorry. Okay. Okay, time's up. More than 10 seconds yun ah. Pao, you have the results? Or can we see results? Okay.
Yes, boss,
26.
I can see.
So, hati tayo lahat. 26% letter A, 32% letter B, 19% letter C, and 23% letter D. So, almost equal. The correct answer is letter D, dog. Okay, all of these are not within the scope of PFRS 3. Okay, that's explicitly stated in the standard. Just a tip for everyone. The first thing that you need to know when you read the standard is what's not in scope. Because this will help, in practice kasi, this will help a lot of people not go through the agony of applying the standard if they know it's out of scope. So that's the first thing we ask, is it in the scope or out of scope? In this case, it's letter D. So all of these are not within. So letter A, accounting for the formation of a joint arrangement, that's within PFRS 11 or joint arrangements. Letter B doesn't really have a specific standard in PFRS or IFRS. Rather, other standards will be applied as an analogy. Okay, like property and equipment. That can be a standard that will be applied for an acquisition of an asset or group of assets. Letter C, combination of entities or businesses under common control. There is also no specific standard on that. The ISB is currently trying to form the guidance for that. But locally, we have what we call the Philippine Interpretations Committee, who provided guidance on letter C. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. So this one is accounting for differences between business combinations and asset acquisition. Okay. PFRS 3 requires different accounting treatment for business combi and asset acquisitions. Okay. Actually, PFRS 3 states that asset acquisition is not within that standard, but it provides a certain guidance on that. So hence, it is critical that the acquirer or the purchaser properly assesses whether the transaction is a business combination or an asset acquisition. So why is that? We go on to the next polling question. Just for me, again, to get a feel. No, I'm not giving any prizes or any penalties for you not getting the right answer. Can we go on to the next? So next polling question. Which of the following are the differences between the accounting for business combinations and accounting for asset acquisition? Letter A, goodwill or a gain of bargain purchase. Letter B, assets acquired and liabilities assumed are generally accounted for at fair value under business combinations, but are assigned a carrying amount based on the relative fair values for an asset acquisition. Directly attributable acquisition-related cost. Expense, if related to a business combination, generally capitalized as part of the cost of an asset in an asset acquisition. And then letter D, all of the above. 10 seconds. Go. Okay, can we see the results? This time, 3% is letter A, 34% letter B, 34% letter C, 29% letter D. So one third, almost one third, one third, one third. Please go back to the slide. Okay, the correct answer is letter D. Again, dog or delta. Okay. Just very briefly, if you have an asset acquisition, there's no goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. Why? Because the acquisition cost that's assigned based on the carrying amount based on the relative fair value. So that means there's virtually no excess between the purchase price and the assets and liabilities acquired. Directly attributable acquisition-related costs for a business combination or for an entity preparing a consol FS, its expense as incurred. For asset acquisition, similar to the acquisition of property and equipment, it's capitalized as incurred. So all of the above. So there are a lot more differences than that. So as you can see, it's quite critical for the purchaser or the acquirer to be able to identify properly if it's a business combination or an asset acquisition, because the future accounting or the future recognition of amounts will depend on that assessment. Next slide. Okay, why the need for the amendments? Okay. The IESB, or the International Accounting Standards Board, as part of their protocol, they have what they call a post-implementation review, which they do every 3 to 5 years after the implementation of the standard or amendments to the standard. Now, in the case of IFRS 3 or PFRS 3, the start of the review was around 2014 and ended around 2016. So in that PIR review, the commenters or the stakeholders said that they have several concerns about how to interpret and apply the definition of a business. One, the definition is too broad. Two, little guidance when a set of assets is not a business. Three, assessing relevance of processes acquired is difficult. Four, set of assets may be a business for some market participants, but not for other market participants. And then the 5, how to apply definition when acquired set of assets does not generate revenue. So these are just some of the concerns raised during the PIR or the post-implementation review. And because of these concerns, the ISB or the board decided to amend IFRS 3. Now in practice, as part of the group, I guess in the introduction earlier, as part of the group that has that handles consultations on business combination, I can say these are all true in practice. Sometimes it's easy to say it's a business. I mean, the acquirer acquires a complete set of company with the inputs, the outputs, the processes, the revenue, etc. It's quite easy. Okay, but in other cases, in most of the complex cases that we have seen, it can entail a lot of consultations before we can arrive at a conclusion, whether it's a business or not. Next slide. Okay, so this is for those who are going to take or who are taking now business combinations. In your opinion, so I just want to see, in your opinion, which of the following guidance under PFRS 3 do you think is the most difficult to implement? Letter A, assessing whether the transaction is a business combination. Letter B, identifying the acquirer. Letter C, applying the acquisition method of accounting. And letter D, measuring and recognizing goodwill. 10 seconds, go. Okay, Pau, please flash the results. 36% letter A. Siguro dahil sa tanong kanina, no? Kung ano yung impact. 15% letter B, 32% letter C. Letter C is applying the acquisition method of accounting, and then 18% letter D. So more than half of you answered either letter A or letter C. Okay. So again, no correct answer for that one. So alam nyo na what you will study when you take up this subject for those who haven't yet touched this subject. Okay, next. Next slide, please. Okay, the amendments were issued in 2016. The exposure draft was published in 2016. The IASB usually gives 1 year or a couple of months for the stakeholders to comment, and then they will discuss and finalize the amendments within a year or so. So the amendments to IFRS 3 were issued in October 2018. The effective date is this year for periods beginning on or after 1 January 2020, and then it will be applied prospectively. So what do we mean by prospectively? That means for any business combinations before January 1, 2020, the amendments are no longer required to be applied. For business combinations after January 1, 2020, that's the time you will apply the amendments. However, early application is permitted, although the companies have to disclose if they early applied any standard or amendments to the standard. Next slide. Okay. So, baka sabihin nyo, ang daming changes, wala bang nagbago? So, there are some changes. There are some that did not change, sorry. So, one is IFRS or PFRS 3 continues to adopt a market participants perspective to determine whether an acquired set of activities and assets is a business. So, why do I need to highlight this? Okay. One of the purposes kasi why we have the standards, right, is to ensure that the FS is comparable or comparative with one another. Okay. If the standard does not emphasize the market participants perspective, so that means that not having that perspective will introduce more subjectivity in the assessment. Kasi the company will always say, I don't need the market participants perspective kasi I will operate those set of activities after I acquire. They can always say that. Or the reason why I'm acquiring this is because strategically I can do something about it in the future. That's another reason. So those are subjective elements that the IASB did not want to put in the assessment of whether it's a business or not. So to reduce the subjective elements and to ensure comparability or consistency of the application of the amendments, the IASB decided to just retain this perspective in the standard. Okay. And then a business still consists of the following elements: inputs, process or processes, and outputs. So all of those elements are still there under the standard. So nothing has changed in that sense. Okay, however, what are the amendments? Next slide. So marami-rami din. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these amendments revolve around 7 major components. And we'll start with the definition of a business. Let's go through the next slide. Just tell me if I'm going too fast, huh? As I said, I cannot see your reactions. Okay, glad to see some of you showing your faces. Okay. So what changed? You will see on the left side, on your left side, the new definition. On the right side, you will see the old one. So the first half of the definition is the same. An integrated set of activities and assets that is capable of being conducted and managed for the purpose of providing. So that's the same. What's different is the next half of the definition. For the new one, they emphasize goods or services to the customers, etc., etc. For the old one, it emphasized providing a return in the form of dividends, etc., etc. Now, what is that last half of the definition? That last half pertains to the outputs that will be derived when they acquire the set of activities. Okay, so what basically changed in the definition is the discussion on the outputs. but the first half did not change. Okay, so we'll discuss more on the change in the output or definition of output later on. Next slide. Okay, minimum requirements to be a business is one thing that changed or was revised. As I said earlier, the elements are still the same. And you can see at the bottom part of the slide what was revised in the standard. What was amended or revised is that the additional word substantive before the process. Okay, so why was this revised? Because in the board's or the IESB's view, what is really the most important element that distinguishes the business from asset acquisition is that there should be a substantive process. So the standard does not really require that all inputs and processes be acquired before we can say it's a business combination or business acquisition. What is important is that when the purchaser or the acquirer acquires the set of activities, there should be one, an input, and another, a substantive process. Okay. Please take note, you do not see here that one of the minimum requirements is an output. Okay. In the old standard and in the amended standard, it's still the same. It doesn't require that an output be there when you acquire the set of activities to be assessed as a business. So even if the company is pre-operating or just starting to operate, okay, if that company when acquired already has the input, already has a substantive process capable of contributing to the ability to create an output, then that newly operated company can still meet the requirements to be assessed as a business. Okay, again, outputs are not required. Okay, so next slide. The other amendment is on the market participants' ability to replace missing elements. You can see at the bottom part of the slide that they slashed or deleted the entire phrase requiring market participants' capability of acquiring the business and continuing to produce an output. So that was removed. Why? Because there were challenges to assess whether the market participants can really replace any missing inputs or processes. In certain cases kasi, the acquirer, okay, may be part of a market or an industry that have very few market participants. Okay, in practice, we do not really assess this part. We kind of ignore this part when we assess there is a business or not. Because as I said, it's very difficult to look around and see other companies or the entire industry, whether other companies or other market participants are capable of replacing the missing elements. So they deleted this part and instead emphasized that what needs to be assessed is what is the current state and condition of the set of activities when these are acquired by the acquirer or the purchaser. So again, this phrase was deleted. Instead, the focus is on the current state and condition of the set of activities. And as I said earlier, this one is basically removing any subjectivity in the assessment. Kasi what they are assessing is based on the current state and the condition. So that means fact-driven yung assessment. Okay. Next slide. Sana hindi pa kayo napapakamot, no? Sa ulo. Okay. Assessing whether an acquired process is substantive. As I stated earlier, the most important element when acquiring a business is the presence of a substantive process. So that means in the amendments, the IESB focused the discussion on substantive process. Okay. There was the amendments provided detailed guidance to help with the assessment of the purchaser or acquirer. And those guidance revolve around how will the purchaser or the acquirer assess whether there's a substantive process if there are no outputs or there is no output on the part of the acquired set of activities. So the amendments basically state that if the company or the set of activities acquired has no output, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is not a business. However, okay, if you assess that it's still a business, even if it doesn't have an output, the purchaser will need to provide or will need to look for more persuasive evidence. Mas mabigat yung ebidensyang hahanapin if the acquired set of activities do not have an output. Okay. One of the evidence needed is an organized workforce. So you will see later on in the criteria to be applied, the phrase organized workforce should always be there. Okay, why? Organized workforce is just an input to a business. Hindi yan process. Input lang siya. But the presence of an organized workforce with the necessary skills or knowledge and the intellectual capacity can be an indicator of a substantive process because that organized workforce can utilize other inputs. They have the knowledge, they know the process, and they can help the inputs provide the output for that acquired set of activities. Okay, in practice, okay, when we have consultations such as this, we always ask the team, ano ba ang inacquire? Okay? Yung inacquire ba kasama yung mga tao na nag-ooperate sa business? Because when you say organized workforce, that's more or less the operations or the operating department of the company. Okay? Hindi po kasama sa organized workforce yung mga admin. So accounting, back office, finance, hindi yan usually kasama sa organized workforce. What is important sa organized workforce? Yung nag-ooperate talaga ng kumpanya. Okay, so if you are acquiring or the acquirer is acquiring a manufacturing company, yung nasa manufacturing division nila will be the organized workforce. Okay, if the acquirer is acquiring a distribution company, yung mga tao nila na nandun sa field or nasa sales can be part of the organized workforce. Okay, so those are examples of organized workforce. So what are the criteria to be able to assess whether the process is substantive? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what I mean when I said that if there are no outputs, mas stringent or mas persuasive dapat yung evidence. Okay, so what are the criteria? First, if there are no outputs, there should be an organized workforce to perform the critical process, and there should be other inputs convertible into outputs. So what are these other inputs? Technology, the in-process research and development, real estate, mineral interest, the manufacturing process. Okay? So if there are no outputs, dalawa yan. Organized workforce, yung mga tao, plus other inputs that the organized workforce can work on to convert into outputs. Absence of any one of these at walang output yung inacquire, not a business. Asset lang siya. If set of activities and assets has outputs, you just need to meet one of these. First is organized workforce to perform critical process should be there, or the process should be unique, scarce, or difficult to replace. Isa lang sa dalawang yan ang kailangan niyang i-meet pag may output. So if the acquirer acquires an operating company or a company that already has revenues, okay, the acquirer just need to assess, did I acquire any organized workforce? Because if the answer is yes, madali lang siyang i-assess as a business. So there are more discussions in the standard requiring this part. Any questions? I don't see a Q&A no sa buttons ko. So any questions you can raise in the chat box. Next slide. Okay, narrow definition of outputs. As I stated earlier, the second half of the definition basically changed the definition of outputs. Okay, before kasi when we say outputs, providing returns in the form of dividends, investment income, etc. Now, the outputs focuses more on goods and services provided to customers, investment returns, and other income from ordinary activities. So tinanggal nila yung return in form of lower cost and other economic benefits. So why is this the case? Okay. They changed the definition of an output kasi one, 2 years ago, IFRS 15 was adopted. IFRS 15 is the standard on revenue recognition. Okay. So that standard basically describes revenue as the process of providing goods or services in the normal course of activities or ordinary activities of the company. Okay. So that means that standard contemplated that the output of a company has to be revenue generating activities. So that's why in this narrow definition of outputs, the output is focused more on goods and services provided to customers to be consistent with IFRS 15. Okay. What about investment returns and other income from ordinary activities? So investment returns are in another standard, but again, that is considered as an output. So why was lower cost and other economic benefits removed? Kasi they said that even if you just acquire an asset, not a business, it's always the case that one of the considerations when you acquire an asset is to lower your cost and be more cost economical in terms of the cost. So it doesn't help the definition of output when they included the lower cost there. So they decided to replace that term. Okay. Okay, you will see at the bottom again what was deleted and what was added in the guidance for outputs. Next slide. Okay, optional concentration test by the phrase, this one is optional, it's not mandatory for IFRS. Okay. For US GAAP, just in case, trivia lang para sa inyo. For US GAAP, they have the same definition of a business, more or less. However, the concentration test for US GAAP is mandatory. So this is one difference, okay? Why did they introduce a concentration test? Because this one permits a simplified assessment of whether acquired set of activities and assets is not a business. So this one is for the acquirer to have an easy way to assess whether the acquired set of activities is not a business. Okay? This can be done on a transaction by transaction basis. So kunwari, the acquirer is in the habit of acquiring set of activities all the time. So, may mga ganyang companies in 1 year, nag-acquire siya ng 3, 4 sa isang taon. So that acquirer can actually elect to apply the concentration test on a transaction by transaction basis. Okay? If met, if the concentration test is met, then the assessment is not a business. No further assessment is required. If not met, or since it's optional, the acquirer did not apply the concentration test, then detailed assessment is needed. In other words, the concentration test is not a test to assess whether the acquired set of activities is a business. It is a test to assess whether it's an asset. Okay? Kasi that concentration test is not determinative or does not determine if the acquired set of activities is a business. Okay. So that's why it's optional, because the acquirer can always choose not to go through that kasi if the test is not met, then ganun din, pupuntahan din yung detailed assessment. Okay. Any questions? So how is that test met? If substantially all of the fair value of gross assets is concentrated on a single identifiable asset or group of similar identifiable assets. So a closer look on the test. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, medyo mahaba. As I said earlier, the concentration test revolves around a group of assets or a single identifiable asset. The fair value that will be considered on that one is the fair value of the gross assets, not the net assets. So hindi papansinin yung liabilities. And the gross assets, when calculated, do not include cash and cash equivalents, deferred tax assets, and goodwill. Bakit hindi siya kasama? Because in the opinion of the IASB or in the standard, they do not contribute to the fair value of the gross assets. That's why they were not included. So this is the calculation, fair value of gross assets, the sum of fair value of the individual assets, except those that are excluded, plus the excess of fair value of the consideration paid, plus the fair value of the NCI or non-controlling assets, and the fair value of previously held interest if this is a step acquisition, less fair value of the net identifiable asset. So this is the definition also of a single identifiable asset. This is the discussion of the single identifiable asset. These are the assets or group of assets recognized and measured as SIA in business combinations. This also includes the tangible assets attached to another considered SIA. Okay. They are considered single identifiable asset if they share the same risk characteristics. Okay. So the standard does not require a detailed calculation. Hindi kailangan pull up ng calculator at i-calculate lahat yan. Just seeing the fair value and doing a rough calculation, you can immediately see if the concentration test is met. So let's have an example. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Just an example calculation, a purchaser holds a 20% interest in entity A. At the acquisition date, the purchaser acquires a further 50% interest in entity A. So before acquisition, significant influence, 20%, associate na siya. After acquisition, naging 70% na yung ownership. Entity A's assets and liabilities at acquisition date are the following. A building with a fair value of 500, an identifiable intangible asset with a fair value of 400, cash and cash equivalents with a fair value of 100, financial liabilities with a fair value of 700, and deferred tax liabilities of 160. So the payment made by the purchaser amounted to 200 for the additional 50%. Purchaser determines the following. The fair value of entity A is 400. The fair value of the NCI, using as a base the fair value of the entity, is 120 or 30% of 400. And the fair value of the previously held interest, the 20% is at 80. So how to calculate for the fair value of the gross assets? Pao, can you go to the second slide after this? Let's not go through na lang the question. Next 2 slides, please. Next slide pa. Okay. The fair value of the gross assets acquired is 1,000. Calculated as the fair value of the building, 500, plus the fair value of the identifiable intangible asset at 400, and plus the 100, which is the sum of the 120, the 200, the consideration paid, plus the fair value of the NCI, which is 120, plus the fair value of the previously held interest, or the 20% at 80, okay, less the fair value of the net identifiable asset acquired, which is the 500 of the property, the building, 400 of the intangible asset, 100 of the cash and cash equivalents, less 700, which is the financial liabilities. So that's 500 plus 400 plus 100, that is equal to 1,000. Alternatively, next slide, please. Okay, the 1,000, sorry, previous slide. The 1,000 can be calculated as fair value, the amount paid, which is 200, plus the 120 plus the 80, so that's 400, plus add back the fair value of the liabilities, assume kasi gross assets to, di ba? So the 400 is the net assets, plus the 700, which is 1,100, sorry, plus the 100, less the deferred tax assets.
Ayun! Kasi sila hiling eh.
Yan ang sinasabi ko sa buhay.
Hindi na nakikinig kasi ako.
Sorry. Okay. So what's the conclusion? Is the optional concentration test met? The answer is hindi sure. It depends kasi we need additional facts for this one. For one, is the intangible asset considered to share the same risk characteristic as the building? Baka hindi kasi magkaibang asset yung dalawang yan. But still, that fact or that circumstance need to be assessed before we can say the concentration test is met. So the 1,000, the fair value of the gross assets acquired, saan yan mapupunta? Yun yung tanong. Is it the building, mapupunta ba yan sa building and intangible asset as one? Or ihihiwalay yan dun sa dalawa? Pag sinabing hiniwalay yan, kasi they are not single identifiable asset, that means the concentration test is not met. Okay. So that means, mag-a-assess pa kung business or hindi. Okay, next slide. How many minutes do I have? Maghihintay ako ng sagot. Ilang minuto pa po ako? $20 minutes, no, I think?
Yes po.
You take those 20 minutes po.
Okay. So this one is applying the definition at a glance. Okay, apply the concentration test. That's optional. Again, that's optional. If the answer is yes, and then the concentration test is met, then it's an asset acquisition. If it's a no, then you go down to the detailed assessment. So that's when you assess whether there are inputs and substantive processes acquired. And that's when you also assess what will be, if the process is substantive, if there is no output, or if there is an output. If everything is met, then you go down to business combination. If not met, asset acquisition. Okay, so that's the definition at a glance. Next slide. Okay, new illustrative examples. There are 9 illustrative examples. This one is new. Usually kasi sa IFRS 3, walang example. So this one they added to help out in the application of the new definition. So the illustrative examples provided a step-by-step process to determine whether an acquired set of activities and assets is a business. Then also the application of the concentration test. So yung example ko kanina sa optional concentration test, that's an example coming out from the standard. Okay, next slide. Do I still have time?
Yes, boss, may time pa naman po. I think hanggang 9:20 naman po yung allowed for us.
So, but
Yes
we
po,
still have a
hanggang
quiz.
9:20 po.
We still have a quiz after this. Gusto ko matapos yung quiz eh. I want to see the winners. Okay. For the example, there is a purchaser that purchases a portfolio of 10 single-family homes, and they each have an in-place lease. The fair value of the consideration paid is equal to the aggregate fair value of the 10 single-family homes. So more or less, walang goodwill. Each single-family home includes the land, building, and property improvements. They also have different floor areas and interior design. The family homes are located in the same area and have the same classes of customers. And then the risks associated with operating in the real estate market are not significantly different kasi family homes lang naman yan. There is no, or there are no employees or other assets or processes transferred. Okay. Next slide. So the question here is not whether it's a business or not. The question here is whether the optional concentration test will be met. Okay. The conclusion is that it will be met because one, there is a single identifiable asset in terms of the single family homes. Okay. Now you can say, paano po yung mga building and property improvements? Those are also assets. Now the building and the property improvements are attached to the land. They cannot be removed. So physically they are considered as one asset. Okay. And then the group share, they are similar in nature and they share the same risks characteristics. So consequently, the 10 single family homes, kahit 10 yan physically, they constitute one group of single identifiable asset. So that means the concentration test or the optional concentration test is met. And the conclusion, next slide, is therefore that the set of activities and assets is not a business. So madali lang, di ba? Concentration test, pag ma-meet, hindi mo na kailangan daanan yung detailed assessment. Okay? So I'm guessing a lot of companies will avail of this if they see na medyo mukhang isang asset lang talaga yung in-acquire nila. Okay, next. Next example, same fact pattern as the first one. So 10 single-family homes were acquired, but in this case, there is an additional multi-tenant corporate office park with a 10-story office buildings that are fully leased. So again, they include other assets such as the land, the buildings, the leases, and the contracts for outsourced cleaning, security, and maintenance. Again, no employees, other assets, or other processes are transferred. The aggregate fair value of the office park is the same as the fair value of the 10 single-family homes. So magkapareho na fair value yung dalawa. The processes performed through the contracts for outsourced cleaning and security are ancillary or minor. Okay, let me just go through the next polling question para makita kung gising pa kayo. If the purchaser in this case elects to apply the concentration test, will the test be met? Yes or no? 10 seconds. Paano wala yung video ko? Sorry, I did not realize na wala yung video ko. Okay. The results, please. Yes. Ang sagot, if the test will be met, 86% says yes, 14% says no. The answer is no. Letter B. So 14% got it correct. Bakit siya no? Next slide. For one, magkaiba yung risk. Kasi we're talking about single-family homes. Diba? It's a residential use type of asset. And the other one is we're talking about corporate office. So commercial. Magkaiba yung risk ng dalawang yan. Scale of operations are also significantly different. I would assume for the 10-story building, yung office space, mas mahal yung lease kaysa sa the other one. And iba yung demographics ng customers nila. Okay? And then the fair value of the office park or the 10-story office building is almost equal to the aggregate fair value of the 10 single-family homes. So that means the fair value of both of those assets combined, pag dinivide mo, magkaibang asset yung pupuntahan nila. Okay? So that means the concentration test in this one is not met. That means the purchaser will have to undergo the detailed assessment required by the standard. So kailangan nilang i-assess susunod. What are the inputs, the process, and if there's any output. So that begs the question. Next slide, please. Let's go through the 5th polling question. This is my last. So since the concentration test was not met, so that means they go through the detailed assessment. Will the acquired set of assets and activities, that means the 10 family homes, the 10-story buildings, the office park, and the outsourced manpower, will those qualify as a business or not? Yes or no? Okay. Can we flash the responses, please? So letter A, 70% answered yes, 30% answered no. The answer is no. Next slide, please. It's not a business. Bakit? Hindi na meet yung concentration test, right? So you have more than one set of identifiable asset. However, sorry, let's backtrack. May output siya. May mga leases kasi yan. So meron siyang revenue. However, okay, walang tao, diba? Kanina sinabi, no employees were acquired or was acquired. Okay, so no organized workforce. So you go on to the next. What was the process acquired? Is the process unique or scarce or difficult to replace? In this case, ang process lang na in-acquire niya is the outsourced cleaning, security, and maintenance personnel. However, this one was stated to be minor. Even in practice, kapag ganyan lang yung in-acquire mo na process, minor lang yan. Kasi yan lang yung nagme-maintain ng properties. So that means these are not unique, these are not scarce, and these are not difficult to replace. You can always enter into a contract with another outsourced company. So that means the process is not substantive, and therefore they do not qualify to be a business. Now you may ask, paano po siya magka-qualify as a business? If yung organized workforce na in-acquire is the one that's in the operating department or operation department. That means the leasing department ng company. Okay. In this case, outsource lang yung yung cleaning, security, and maintenance na in-acquire niya. So that is also not a substantive process. So that means may input siya, pero wala siyang process, may output siya, equals hindi siya business. So wala yung process. Okay? So questions? I'm leaving the next slide, please. This one is a blank. Sorry, nilagyan na pala ng Menti. Okay. Before we go to the Menti for the quiz, any questions? Okay, sino pong nag-ooperate ng Menti?
Hi, boss. Ako po mag-share po ng screen for the Menti.
Okay, can you share the code na lang para
Alright, sige po.
we can see na kung ilan yung papasok.
Alright, sige po. For the host, yung na lang. Siguro.
So that's
I'll
my
share
last
my
slide
screen.
actually. So we go to the quiz.
Okay, so guys, are you ready for the quiz? So for the mechanics for the quiz will be, you can go to the www.menti.com and use the code 74405 using your mobile phones or iPads. It is already flashing the screen earlier. And also the next step is the faster you answer, the more points you will get. And last but not the least, the top 3 winner will be shown after.
So again, the code is 3674405. We highly encourage you to answer the 5-item quiz as there will be a cash prize from our generous speaker, Miss Emmy. Good luck, guys!
Good luck, everyone!
Siguro before we start, for us to, kasi pag Menti, di ba, you use code names. For us to know kung sino yung top 3, please do a screenshot when you get the results and show it to Pau. And then give your, sabihin na ba natin, Pau? Your GCash number?
Yes po, sige po.
Kasi the price will be a cash. Hindi lang ganun kalaki ha, sorry. Generous na guys, na narinig ko.
We currently have 72 participants, so increasing naman po.
Okay.
Sige po, I'll press start na po.
Wait lang. How many do we have now? 150?
150, hindi na po nag-i-increase, boss.
Okay. So organizers, okay na kayo for 150?
For the
Nasa
for the
200.
organizers, okay na ba? Are we good to proceed?
Kasi nasa 200 tayo.
148 na lang po here. Hindi na po gumagalaw.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
proceed na po, ma'am, if you want po.
Okay, sige. Let's start.
Sige. Let's start with the first question. How many seconds are we giving them, Pao?
15 seconds po.
Okay. So first question, what is defined as an integrated set of activities and assets that is capable of being conducted and managed for the purpose of producing outputs? Letter A, inputs. Letter B, processes. Letter C, business. Letter D, outputs. Parang hindi yata sila nabigyan. The correct answer is business. Okay.
Go, Mikos.
Kasama ba si Mikos dito? Sige.
Okay. So the faster, yes po.
Time muna para basahin yung question and then tsaka lang sila mag 15 seconds. Can it be done?
I think, hindi ko po ata na ano yung boss. Pero pag nag-show na po kasi yung screen, yung questions automatic na po.
Okay. Sige.
Opo. Okay
Pabilisan ng
next
basahan to. Okay, next question. Next question is, unahan ko na lang siya. Madali lang naman yung questions. Which of the following is not an element of a business? Letter A, business. Letter B, inputs, outputs, or processes. So the correct answer is business. So let's see the results. So, wala si Mikos. Crizel, Angel, and sorry, can't read. Zlatan. Okay, next question. So this one is just true or false. Number 4 na.
Wala.
An acquired set of inputs and activities that does not have an output will never qualify as an acquisition of a business. True or false? Time's up. Wow. The answer is false. Hindi required yung outputs, ha? Oh. I think yung number 3 kanina nasa number 1 na, if I'm not mistaken. Nag-iba. Okay, number 4. Which of the following is not considered an output? Goods and services provided to customers, lower costs, dividends, or interest? Two, one. Time's up. The correct answer is lower costs. Last question, true or false? Nag-iiba yung leaderboard, Last question. The concentration test is optional, true or false? Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5. Time's up. Correct answer is true. So let me see the leaderboard, please. So Jelsa is number 1. Congrats. So top 3.
All right. So for the organizers, let's just siguro record yung top 3 and then you can share their details and GCash number na lang to me for the prizes. Congratulations.
So I think that's all for my presentation. If you have any questions after this, you can always contact Pau to get in touch with me if you have any questions or reactions. So thank you very much to the organizers for inviting us here, and I wish you good luck on the remaining parts of this conference. Thank you.
Indeed, we all should be guided with PFRS 3 business combination as it improves the reliability, comparability, and relevance of the information that our reporting entity provides in its financial statements regarding a business combination and its effects. Thank you so much, Ma'am Villanueva, for that informative discussion about business combination and for sharing valuable insights that's beneficial for our CPA licensure examination as feature certified public accountant. Yes, JPIAns, let's claim it. We will be a CPA. Through hard work and determination, we can make it. Thank you as well, JPIAns, for your active participation in our discussion. Now, I'll be reading the citation for the Certificate of Appreciation for our speaker. This Certificate of Appreciation is proudly presented to Ms. Maria Emilita Villanueva for attending the Annual Provincial Meeting with the theme Orbis, Navigating Through the New Normal of National Federation of Junior Philippine Institute of Accountants, Region 4, given this 25th of October 2020, signed Kiala Jen C. Manalo, Regional Vice President for Communication, Ika Sky Lazaro, Regional Council President, and Caitlin R. Aguinaldo, Regional Vice President for Membership, John Jeric Fernandez, a Regional Co-Advisor, Maria Leo Orgalias, a Regional Co-Advisor, and George Matthew Makatangay, Regional Advisor. Once again, thank you so much po, Ma'am Villanueva. We are fortunate to have you this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you po, Ms. Maria Emilita Villanueva. And guys, time check. It is already 9:25 a.m. in the morning, Philippine Standard Time. And we have 229 participants. And mula po sa amin sa Silayag Federation, maraming salamat po.